The 5 greatest empires of ancient Rome. Ancient Rome is not just an empire. It is a matrix of power, an architecture of law, and a myth that still rules the imagination of humanity. For almost half a thousand years, Rome gave birth to emperors who did not just wear crowns, they rewrote history. They built cities, destroyed civilizations, changed religions, built roads that time and war have not yet erased. Their names are carved in stone, in the gold of coins, and in the very essence of the concept of power. But not every Caesar deserves the title of great. In this video, we will show you the 5 greatest emperors of Rome, those who did not just sit on the throne, but shaped what we call Europe today. Who stopped the chaos after the fall of the Republic? Who established the Golden Age? And who, ruling the empire, understood it more deeply than the senators themselves? This will not be a list of dates. These are portraits of people who knew how to manage millions and remained in eternity. Watch until the end, because the last name on this list will surprise even history experts. 5th on our list is Emperor Constantine the Great, the ruler who not only kept the empire from falling, but also forever changed its essence. The man who began a new era, the Christian era. It was Constantine who transformed Rome from a pagan military machine into a state of faith, centralized government, and a new order. He was born in 272 into the family of an officer, but the political situation at that time was extremely difficult. The Roman Empire was divided, its parts were ruled by different tetrarchs, and each of them dreamed of absolute power. After the death of his father, Constantine declared himself Caesar, and began one of the largest campaigns to unify the empire in history. In 312, the fateful battle took place on the Mulvian Bridge against the usurper Maxentius. According to legend, on the eve of the battle, Constantine saw a cross in the sky and the inscription, "In hoc signo vinces," by this sign you will conquer. He ordered the symbol of the cross to be placed on the shields of his legionaries. The victory was complete. This moment changed everything. The very next year, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity and put an end to centuries of persecution. But he went further. He began to build temples, support the church, and at the end of his life, he himself was baptized. It was from his time that the church became a political force, and the emperor, its defender. In 330, Constantine founded a new capital, Constantinople, which would become the support of Byzantium for the next millennia. The city was not just an administrative center, it was a new Rome, Christian in spirit and strategic in location. Trade, culture, the army, and faith converged there. Constantine reformed the army, strengthened finances, and streamlined legislation. But most importantly, he changed the very concept of the empire. From now on, the emperor was not only a warrior and a lawyer, but also a messenger of God on earth. His reign is a bridge between antiquity and the Middle Ages, between the pagan past and the Christian future. For this, he went down in history not only as an emperor, but as an equal to the apostles' saint in the Orthodox tradition. Constantine was not the first to unite an empire, but he became the one who rewrote its soul. 4th on our list is Emperor Hadrian, a philosopher-emperor, architect, strategist, and poet. A man who did not conquer new lands, he built Rome in depth, not breadth. During his reign, the empire reached its highest internal stability, cultural flourishing, and, for the first time in history, clearly defined borders. Hadrian came to power in 117 AD after the death of Trajan. Inheriting the empire at the peak of its expansion, he did the unexpected. He abandoned some of the conquered territories, including Mesopotamia, and focused not on expansion, but on strengthening. It was not fear, it was strategy. He understood that Rome was not infinite, and that strength was in limits, not in scope. The most famous symbol of his policy is Hadrian's Wall in Britain. This gigantic wall, 117 kilometers long, became not just a defensive structure, but the first official border of the Roman Empire, a division between civilization and the barbarian world. It contains all of Hadrian's logic: control, stability, observation. Hadrian traveled almost the entire empire, from Spain to Syria, from North Africa to Athens. He rebuilt roads, strengthened fortresses, supported local temples, communicated with the provincial elite. He was an emperor who knew the empire not from reports, but with his own eyes. He adored Greece. It was under him that Athens again became the cultural heart of the empire. There he built the gigantic temple of Olympian Zeus, completed a number of architectural projects, and turned the city into the center of Hellenism. In Rome itself, on his orders, the majestic Pantheon was erected in the form that we see today. Its dome is one of the largest in the world, with a perfect opening in the center, symbolizing the connection between heaven and earth. Hadrian left behind not conquered lands, but an infrastructure that lived for centuries. He reformed the bureaucracy, the army, and finance. He restored the system of laws, laid the foundations for the further development of law. And at the same time he wrote poetry, communicated with philosophers, and was a patron of the arts. His reign became an era of balance. Without major wars, without catastrophes, without despotism. His real victory was order. And that is why he is among the greatest. Third on our list is Emperor Diocletian. The ruler who didn't inherit Rome, he pieced it together. His empire was torn apart, worn down by crises, usurpers, famine, and barbarians. But he didn't just hold on to power, he rebooted the system itself, making Rome viable for hundreds of years to come. When Diocletian became emperor in 284 AD, Rome was going through the darkest period of its history. Over the previous 50 years, more than 20 emperors had ascended the throne. Most had died violent deaths. The army had become the emperor's judges, the economy was collapsing, and the borders were bleeding. Diocletian's response was revolutionary. He created a system of tetrarchy, a rule by four, 2 Augusti and 2 Caesars, who ruled the empire collectively. This made it possible to effectively manage gigantic territories, the West, the East, the Balkans, Africa, and to respond quickly to threats. But he did not stop at the reform of power. He completely rebuilt the state machine. He streamlined the provinces, dividing them into smaller units. He created a clear hierarchy of positions that reduced abuse of power. He strengthened the army and divided it into border and mobile forces. He introduced tax reform, taking into account population and productivity. In 301, he issued the Edict of Maximum Prices, trying to stop the inflation that was destroying the Roman currency. Although this did not solve all the problems, the approach itself was innovative. For the first time, the state took control of the economy to such an extent. Diocletian's religious policy is the most controversial aspect of his reign. He launched the most brutal persecution of Christians in Roman history, believing that the growth of the new faith was destroying traditional Roman unity. Christian temples were burned, priests were thrown into prison. But the paradox is that his systemic reforms, including centralization, later became the basis for Constantine's Christian empire. In 305, for the first time in Roman history, Diocletian voluntarily abdicated. He retreated to a villa in Split, modern Croatia, where he grew cabbages and refused to return, despite the entreaties of the Senate. His empire did not survive the Tetrarchy for long. But the very structure he created saved Eastern Rome, Byzantium, for a millennium. Diocletian is an architect of survival. His greatness lies not in battles, but in the fact that he turned a crumbling state into an orderly mechanism. Second place on our list is Marcus Aurelius, the last of the 5 good emperors, a ruler who is remembered not only for his victories, but above all for the depth of his thinking. A man who held not only a sword, but also a pen in his hand. A stoic emperor whose diary became a spiritual weapon for generations. Marcus Aurelius ascended the throne in 161 AD. His era was still the peak of the Roman Empire, but already with disturbing clouds on the horizon. When other rulers celebrated glory, he received war, epidemics, riots, and a long external invasion. In the north of the empire, the tribes of the Marcomanni and Quadi began an invasion across the Danube. The struggle was long and fierce. But it was here that the greatness of Marcus Aurelius as a strategic but humane commander was revealed. He personally conducted campaigns, lived in camps, shared life with soldiers, and at the same time wrote Reflections on Myself, a book that still amazes with its simplicity and depth. Amidst the chaos, he remained faithful to Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches you to accept life as it is, act honestly, and live in harmony with reason. His words, "Everything that happens has already happened a million times. The only thing that matters is who you remain in this world," In addition to the war, his reign fell on one of the greatest epidemics of antiquity, the Antonine Plague. It devastated the population of the empire, destroying up to 20% of the inhabitants. Mark did not leave Rome, did not flee to the residence. He stayed, making decisions in the most difficult times. He also carried out judicial reform, limited the abuses of officials in the provinces, simplified the appeal system, and protected the rights of slaves and children. Even in religious politics, he remained tolerant. Although Christianity was still persecuted at that time, Marcus was not fanatical. His greatness lies not in imperial ambitions, but in moral authority. His life is proof that it is possible to rule without losing humanity. His legacy is not only within the walls of Rome, but in the hearts of millions who read his meditations even today. Marcus Aurelius died in 180 during another campaign in the north. His death is considered the end of the golden age of Rome. The first place on our list is Gaius Octavian Augustus, the man who started the Roman Empire. A strategist without a sword, a politician without equal, Caesar's heir, who was able not only to survive the civil war, but also to turn the broken republic into the most powerful state of the ancient world. When Julius Caesar was killed in 44 BC, young Octavian was only 18 years old. But in his will, Caesar named him his son and heir. From that moment on, the path began that would make him the first emperor in the history of Rome. He destroyed enemies not only on the battlefield, but in the senates, in alliances, in marriages and treaties. First, he united with Mark Antony and Lepidus in the Second Triumvirate. Then, he destroyed Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. And when he returned to Rome, he did not take the title of king. He did more. He took power, leaving the appearance of a republic. In 27 BC, the Senate gave him the title Augustus, exalted, sacred. He became princes, the first among equals. And although officially the republic continued to exist, all power was in his hands: military, judicial, religious, financial. Augustus restarted Rome. He reformed the army, creating professional legions and a pension system for veterans. He founded the imperial guard, the Praetorians. He built a new system of provincial governance. He restored temples, roads, aqueducts. He introduced a program of moral revival of society, with family laws and support for traditions. During his reign, the Pax Romana began, the Roman peace, which lasted for more than 200 years. No emperor had inherited such a chaotic empire, and left such a stable one. Augustus's architectural program was legendary. I took Rome in brick. I left it in marble. Hundreds of structures were built, including the Forum of Augustus, the Temple of Mars, the Avenger, the Mausoleum. His greatness lay in the balance of power and image. He was not a god, but he allowed himself to be deified. He was not a king, but he ruled as a monarch. His reign became the template for all future emperors. And that's why he's number one on the list, not for the number of battles he fought, but for his ability to build a state that lasted for centuries. Augustus died in 14 AD. His name became a title. And from then on, every emperor was Augustus. Rome gave birth to hundreds of emperors. Some came in blood and disappeared into oblivion. Some ruled with fear and burned in their own fire. But there were those who held the empire like breathing, built not only walls but also meanings. Their strength was not in tyranny, but in the fact that they knew Rome. They understood it and led it through chaos to order. Augustus, the founder of the system. Marcus Aurelius, the conscience of the state. Diocletian, its architect. Hadrian, its builder. Constantine, the one who changed its soul. They did not just rule, they rewrote the rules of power. And even if their bodies disappeared, their names did not. Because Rome is not only stone and sword, it is a principle. As long as Rome is remembered, those who held it in their hands also live. Subscribe if history for you is not about dates, but about fate. Write in the comments, whose style of government is closer to you? Augustus or Marcus Aurelius? The next video is even deeper, even older, even louder, because history is not the past, it is a warning.